Hey friends, Irene Lyon here. Welcome to this video, to this YouTube channel, and to this world of healing trauma and nervous system health and all things neuroplasticity. Just a few days ago, I asked one of my colleagues who helps me answer questions in my forums here and on Facebook and in our paid groups and email. What is a question that you're seeing a little more of that I haven't addressed yet in vlog or article format? And they said exercise. And I said, great, because this is actually something that I was trained in diligently in my 20s. So I'm going to talk about why exercise is important, the importance of high intensity exercise, but also how to get our physical fitness, aerobic capacity, and muscular strength back when we have had early trauma, chronic conditions, where we are at a point where the thought of even doing something that remotely resembles exercise seems like an impossibility. So, quick background so you understand why I have the right to talk about this. My first study, my undergrad and my master's work is in exercise science, biomedical science, and health science. So I studied to be a personal trainer, a fitness rehabilitation expert. In my 20s, I worked in too many gyms to even count within my fingers. I've watched a lot of treadmills in my day, and I put together a lot of exercise programs for people all the way from really low functional fitness and rehabilitating after surgeries all the way to Olympic level athletes. So I've worked with a lot of folks, and it's been really cool to work at all these different levels. One of the things that we know from the research, and this is what I did in my master's work, is that as human beings, really as any animal, mammal on this planet, we need to use our bodies. We need to put stress, good stress, into our system. We need to use our heart. We need to use our lungs. We need to keep our joints and tendons and ligaments strong. And the one thing that we have seen and we know is that when we lose the capacity to move and be independent and get down to the floor and back up again to be able to push weight and be strong, our ability to live well, to be, like I said a second ago, independent and really be healthy overall, and not just physically, but also mentally, this is all very important. And we have this thought in our human culture, and it's starting to change, that as we age, we just naturally decline. And one of the reasons why we naturally decline isn't because of how we're programmed necessarily. It's because we stop moving. We stop doing what we used to do. And if I look at the study I did in my mid-20s, my master's degree, and I'll post a picture or something that you can go and link to that thesis. I worked with older adults, so 65 to 85 years old. I think the oldest was 89, and we put them through high intensity strength training, like really heavy weightlifting with their legs. And this occurred because the research has shown that when you take an older population, even a very frail and chronically ill population of people, and you put them into intense strength training, all the markers in their bodies and mine start to improve. The woman who really pioneered this research, she is in Australia. Her name is Fiatarone. She's Italian. And she was one of my mentors' heroes. And then I got into her research and she became my hero. And I based my master's work on her work. So I'll link her below in the notes so that you can find it. But needless to say, when someone asks me, Irene, what did you learn in that study? I said, well, I learned that exercise is just, we need to do it. Which means that if you cannot exercise vigorously, so this is more than just going for a leisurely walk on a flat surface in a park. This means bringing our heart rate up to 80%, being able to walk up a hill, being able to do intense activity. If we can't do that as humans, slowly our function will decline. I know that might seem like a bold statement, but as a generality, we need to do this. And the reason why is our muscles And our heart is built for that. We have different fibers within our muscular system that are made for strength and explosiveness and fast movements. And as we've seen, when people improve their exercise aerobic capacity, there's really no limit to how far we can go. So I'm going to put the exercise spiel to the side. I just wanted to start with that so that you all know that it is really important. And if anything, we could see being able to exercise vigorously as an end goal. Now, if I think about people who can't exercise vigorously, I'm actually someone that falls into this camp. I've had a lot of knee injuries, a lot of surgeries. I have highly osteoarthritic knees, especially my left one. I can't run the way I used to be able to on earth. Even in the trails, it's too hard on my knee because of the damage. But I find ways to bring my heart rate up and be vigorous in other ways. I still go to the gym, I use an exercise bike, I use an elliptical trainer, I swim, and I lift weights with parts of my body that can go up in intensity so that I get that benefit of high intensity effort. So there are ways to get intensity into our body, even if we can't do what often people think of as running and these kind of hard, jarring joint things. So I am living proof that you can keep exercising intensively even when you have damaged joints. Okay, so let's just put that to the side, as I mentioned. Let's talk about someone, maybe you or your clients have chronic illness and you're trying to get back. You have to, first of all, understand that it has to be done. Exercise has to be done in a titrated way. We can't just go in and start doing the most intense, vigorous workout because, first of all, the system isn't going to like it. Secondly, we might get injured. And thirdly, the system is going to not want to do it again. So we need to start slow and small. And this is where a lot of people don't keep going because it feels like what they're doing is nothing. But it is parallel to, say, how we work with the nervous system to help re-regulate, bring regulation back. Maybe someone that has chronic pain, we're going to want to work in small little doses so that the system starts to build up foundation. So the first thing, if you want to get into working with your body more and getting more vigorous activity into it, you have to learn how to listen to the system. And in our culture, it's epidemic right now that we disconnect from this body of ours and we just go about our day almost cut off from everything that is keeping us alive. And we're all in here in our mental and our psyche and our cognition, in our mind. So one of the things that my clients and my students learn as soon as they start working with me through the nervous system work that I do is how to follow their impulses. And that means learning to listen to the biology. Follow impulse doesn't mean to, as I often say, eat all the cookies in the cookie jar. It is to listen to how our physiology works. And some of the best ways to do that, and this is going to sound really basic, but to listen to when you are hungry, to stop eating when you are full, to feel the pressure in your bladder or rectum when you need to urinate or have a bowel movement. I know these might seem really basic, but we have trained ourselves as humans to not listen to that and override what our body is telling us. So food and just basic general house cleaning of our pipes is one way to first start. Another is to listen to our fatigue levels, listen to our desire to speak up, to say what we want to say. If emotions are coming up, so anger and sadness and grief and disgust and joy and surprise, all the basic human emotions, to feel those emotions and really be with them rather than ignoring them and saying, I don't want to feel that. We've been programmed and conditioned to have good emotions and bad emotions, and it's absolutely messing with not only our mental health, but our physiological health. So to go back, one of the first things, believe it or not, to starting to exercise is not necessarily exercise itself, but starting to listen to the body through these ways of following the impulses, listening to the emotions, and then expressing them. The next thing is to start to move more in your general day. Now, again, this is all advice that a lot of people hear all the time. So using the stairs, parking your car farther away from, the entrance to the grocery store. If you are going somewhere and you drive or you take a bus, getting off a few stops before you're supposed to, and walking. Walking is actually one of the key, not actually, it is our human birthright to be on our 2 feet upright, be bipedal, and walk. And we hardly do it. So to walk more, to find ways to do more activity in your day to day. Now, how that occurs for you is going to be very individual, and that's what you have to get creative with. Again, sounds like boring advice, but in our day and age where we sit at computers a lot, I do more than I'd like to admit, I find ways to go to the grocery store and just return bottles or get one thing as a way to take a break, or I will walk to the post office because I still go to the post office. All these things that we tend to drive to or get help with, try to do more of that. Now, the other thing is, let's just say that you live somewhere where you can't walk to get somewhere. And this is so common right now in suburbia, where we're not living in cities. We have to drive places. Then if that's the case, that's where getting some kind of gym membership, some kind of community membership, maybe finding some YouTube movement videos online and moving with them. I mean, it might seem crazy that we're getting our activity through this medium of the internet, but I also think it's been created for this exact fact. I remember being in my teenage years and doing aerobics with the television, right? I don't know if that stuff still exists, but find ways to get moving, even if it's just little bits. Now, someone might say, but Irene, there's no way I could do an entire hour-long aerobic workout on the internet or what have you. And it's the same with what I just mentioned about walking. Walk that extra block, do a little extra of something. So this is where that topic of override comes in. So if we have got unresolved trauma that we have been living with and working with, and let's just say, I'm going to pick an example. You're someone that is living with chronic fatigue, with fibromyalgia, with some form of chronic illness that really does cause pain and fatigue, and your adrenals are burnt out. This is real, right? So we're not going to want to push you like boot camp and say you have to do an hour every day for 5 weeks. That would be reckless from a fitness perspective. It would be reckless from a nervous system perspective. So we have to start small. And many of us, just a little side note, who are living with these chronic illnesses, we have these chronic illnesses because at some point in our life, we had to disconnect from this body, we had to override, and often we had to do everything to keep ourselves safe, more than what we really should have. So often this population of folks, they're masters at overriding, and therefore they get into trouble when they have that extra bout of energy and they do too much. They do everything that they couldn't do last week in one day. And then what occurs for the next week, they're on their backs flat because of let's say an autoimmune flare, for example. So if you fall into this category, you got to take it slow. You got to work with those basics. And then you've got to find ways to titrate, use that word very deliberately, titrate the activity. Titrate is a word from organic chemistry. One of my teachers, Peter Levine, mentions it in his work, Somatic Experiencing. It is a way of doing little bits at a time, just like you would express emotion when you're starting to really work with emotions in little bits. You don't want to have an absolute freak out and get everything out all in one day, because the system is going to say, screw you, that wasn't fun, and we're going to shut down more and give you a migraine headache, for example, right? So we have to go slow with the movement, just like we want to go slow with healing specific traumatic memories and also feeling emotional impulses that have been stored for so long. So doing little bits might mean doing something that is just moving the joints very slowly. It might mean walking on the spot. I know that seems really boring, But trust me when I say one of the ways we got to get activity back into our system is through means that are very simple. It might mean using your home as a way to move more. It might mean cleaning a little bit more than what you normally do. Again, I know this sounds so simple, but moving the hands, moving the arms, wringing out towels or washcloths when you're cleaning, getting onto the floor and moving the hands and using the body. Again, sounds strange that I'm giving you that example, but there's a reason. If you've ever watched the movie The Karate Kid, when Mr. Miyagi was teaching Daniel how to be a martial artist, he had him wash the floor. He had him paint the fence. He had him wax the car. While that was a very specific way to train him in these movements, it got him fit to be a martial artist. So how can you find little ways in your home to get your heart rate up? But then you have to listen. This goes back to following the impulses. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you set out to vacuum your entire house one day. You're going to need to listen and pause so that you get your heart rate going. But then when you feel that the system is like verging on that's enough, you stop. You turn the power off, you sit down, you feel your heart rate, you feel the ground under you, you look around, you stay present, and then you feel that physiological response, that increase in blood pressure, you feel it go down. You wait a few minutes, maybe a minute more, you stand up, you look around, you then ask yourself, do I keep going or is that enough for today? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. This is where you have to follow your own adventure, right? So maybe you do, I'm like, I'm okay, I'm gonna do a little bit more. You do a little bit more. Again, you listen to the system. If it says, that's enough, you go, okay. And you have to listen. Because if there's that part of you, that parent or that caregiver that's like, push through it, suck it up, don't cry. If that is there, you have to say, I'm not listening to you today. I'm going to do this. And you know what? I'm going to stop. And this is enough for today. And this is where we have to then feel things like shame, things like defeat, and know that that is just the old conditioning coming in, trying to stop us and sabotage this act of vacuuming the house. Again, strange example, I know, but hopefully you see how this can relate to maybe going for a walk. Maybe you have a desire to walk around a park, but you start with just walking the first 100 meters or 50 meters and you stop and you're, this is enough, and you turn back. If I think back to when I was rehabbing my orthopedic injuries, being someone that could run down mountains in my 20s, you don't understand how hard it was to just do 5 minutes on a bike and be okay with that and then get in the pool and float. But I listened, I followed the impulse, I listened to my physiology, and thankfully because of that practice, I can do a lot of movement, a lot of intensity, even though technically, according to doctors, I shouldn't even be able to stand on this knee. I had to listen. So reeling back, we started this by exercise. First of all, it is very important. We want to build up to being vigorous with our activity. And we have to first, if we fall into the category of chronic illness, some form of debilitation in the body, we have to know what our bodies can handle. We have to learn how to follow the impulses within, feel our emotions, and then we have to use the concept of titration and not overriding so that we can build up capacity in the body. Now, one sidebar, another sidebar, we'll put it over there, is if you know that you have got some form of illness that shuts your body down, shuts the nervous system down. This is called the dorsal vagal response of the parasympathetic. I'm going to post a video below on the polyvagal theory. It's important to understand that because many people that fall into that category of chronic illness, autoimmune, low blood pressure, fibromyalgia, their system defaults to shutting down when they experience intensity. I'll say that one more time. Those systems have a tendency to default to shutting down when they feel intensity and anything that might resemble fear, threat, and we're all going to die. And the system goes, nope, we're shutting down, blood pressure drops, that's where we get the dizziness. That's where we get the passing out. That's where we get that overwhelming sense of fatigue. So if this is you, this is where this vacuum example is really important, because you are essentially trying to rewire not just your mind, but your cardiovascular, your blood pressure, it's called the orthostatic tension, to get the blood to the muscles and in some ways reshape the system's desire to shut down and pass out. To do that means, again, titration, little bits so that you do feel the heart rate go up, and then you stop before the heart rate and the nervous system goes stop and drops your blood pressure. Again, very delicate work here. I do recommend, if you are someone that wants to start exercising, I'm going to say consult your GP, your physician, tell the people in your house that you're experimenting with this. If you live with people, tell your therapist. If you work with someone, you want to make sure that you're monitoring this and you're not pushing, and that your system is responding as it should, which is we do activity, heart rate goes up. We stop activity, heart rate goes down, but it goes down in a soft way that isn't this massive stop, and shut down. All right. I've covered cardiovascular activity, what we would consider aerobic activity. I'm not going to get into strength training today and lifting weights. We'll save that for another video, because we don't want to start with that until we can get a little more vigor, a little more increased heart rate, a little more increased blood pressure, obviously blood to all the cells. We want to get to that first. And then once we get to that, then we might start bringing in more intense activity in the form of lifting weights, of pushing weights, of using more of our strength. And I'll just give you a little teaser for that. We do want to build muscle mass. We do want to build more strength in our muscles. Not only is it important for our function and being able to do things around the house, outside, to prevent ourselves from falling over when we slip, it's important also for our metabolism and for our glucose control within our body, and that kind of blood sugar balance that we're wanting to keep in check as we age. All right, a little different today. Hopefully this is useful. Let us know. And as I said, if anything, have the goal be to be more active, to get more exercise, and to get there means going slow, being titrated, following your impulses, and letting all of what's in here express as it wants to. All right, thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time.